just wanted to help you get along with your aprons while we can't have class. So all of you should have washed your aprons, all right? And you're going to, remember I told you you're going to fold them in half. Some of you will have longer ones than the others. Remember, if you're doing a bib, you only want to fold, you want to take only 1 yard to do the bottom of it, and then the half a yard you should have bought in or gotten needs to be put aside, okay? So pretend this one's just a yard. I've already folded it in half. It's a little bit shorter. This is just a pretend piece, okay? I folded it in half like it should be. So this is what your fabric should look like, all right? And what I would have done is ironed it down. But I decided that, you already know that, I've already told you that. So if you should have had it look like this and had it ironed. This is the seam I was telling you about that you're going to cut. So what you would end up doing is going right up like this. Okay? But I'm going to cut a little bit off this, so I don't need all this fabric, just to demonstrate for you. So I'm going to cut this off. So what it would have given you is two separate pieces. Okay? We're going to take these two pieces and we're actually going to sew them together. That's going to make our longest part of our apron. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to show you. You can see on this part that I've already done that. This has already been cut and taken care of like it needs to be, so that it'll end up being the length I need it to make the apron. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it, and I'm going to go over to my sewing machine. Here I have my serger set up in my sewing machine, but right now I'm just going to use the sewing machine, okay? And we're going to take the middle part. Let me grab my chair here. We're going to take the middle part. Now we're not sewing together the part we just cut. That wouldn't make sense, would it? We're only sewing together the other ends so that we're making it longer, okay? So I'm using a different color thread so that you girls can really see what I'm doing. So you would take it and pin it together to make sure it doesn't move on you. I normally don't pin it together, but for your sake I'll pin it together just to show you how it goes. I'm going to pin as much as you need. You might not need a lot, but you might not be comfortable unless you put a lot. And see, when I cut it, I did a little defect. So later on, when I am done sewing it together, I'll just snip that part off, because I don't need that, and that doesn't look quite right. Now, this sewing machine, I need to take the pins off it as I go, because this machine doesn't like the pins. So this is what I'm going to do. You see on my sewing machine, if you can, I don't know if you can see it, there we go. Okay? See, I have that fabric on the first notch. If I take the foot off, you can see there's a notch right there on your sewing machine. That is what I'm going to use for my seam allowance. All right? Let me give this back to Mary. Okay? So that's what I'm going to use to my seam allowance. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go forward a little bit. Get this out of the way. Go forward and then backwards, because that'll set my stitch. That'll keep it from coming out. Okay? Take my pin out as I go. Stay on that line. I'm going to keep my fabric pulled. I'm going to hold it snug. Okay? But I'm going to let the machine do the work for me. So I'm just going to go along. Taking my pins out as I go, but making sure it stays on that line. Right? I'm just going to keep going. Take that off. And keep going. Okay, now when I come to the other end, I need to do another stay stitch. I'm just going to go back with my reverse. This is my reverse button on my machine. Everybody has a different one. Some people have it up top, some people have a lever, whatever it is. That's your reverse button, okay? So we're going to I'm going to snip my threads, and while I'm up at this end, I'm going to snip that little piece off that I don't need. Okay, now, look. When you open it, you're going to have a seam in the middle, okay? See that seam? See that seam? Okay, now we're going to take it, I'm going to iron that seam down. Okay, so it gives us a nice, and I'm going to iron it open. Now, because I have a serger, what I normally would do is I would serge the edge of this. But since you don't have one, most of you, that's okay. So we're just going to go along, and we're going to make it look nice no matter what. Okay, and it's good to use a nice hot iron. I didn't get my iron quite hot enough. And you want to use steam on it. This is cotton, so steam helps. Okay, so now it's ironed flat. Okay, now what we're going to work on, gathering it. Gathering, some people have a gathering foot on their stuff, but I'm going to show you the way that I learned, and it's a great way so you don't have to have anything special. I'm going to make my stitch as long as I can. On our sewing machines, you can make your stitches long or short. I'm going to make mine as long as I can because I find it easier to be able to do it. Okay? Now, I am unconventional. I do it a little different than most people. Oh, let me show you something too. My edge is already finished here and here. Now, if my edge wasn't finished, what I would do is I would fold it over once, iron it down. Then I would fold it over again and iron it down. And I would put it in the machine and I would sew my sides down. But because my edges are finished, I don't have to do that. But what I'll do it though, I'm going to do it so that for your sake, those that have to do that, it's a good way to do it. It's a good way to make it look. So I'm just going to stitch as close to the left edge as I can because it just looks better. Okay, and all I'm doing, I'm just going over once, going over twice. And you just want to make sure those that need to pin, go ahead and pin it. I've done this a long time, so I don't usually pin it, but the pin will keep it. You want to make sure it stays the same width. Okay, you want to keep your width. That's why ironing it down before you sew it will keep whatever width that you have done and whatever you chose. Okay, and I keep it a little bit tight, because that'll make sure my thread doesn't my fabric doesn't pucker or anything, and I'm not going to end up with a funny look. Okay, so there's that, and normally you would do a back stitch, a stay stitch, but I'm choosing not to do that because I'm actually going to do a hem on one end, and then the other end will be our pull through. So that will all, once we're done sewing, will all end up tight anyways. If you're not comfortable with doing that, just go ahead and do a back stitch on it when you first start and when you end. Okay, that's using your reverse button. So I'm going to quickly do this side, same way. I'm just going to fold over once, the width that I want it to be, and I'm going to fold over one more time. So it's the width I want. Okay, and then I'm going to go as close to the edge, and I will back stitch just to show you on this one. So you're doing your reverse, then you go back over, and I'm just going to fold it again. I'm going to hold it snug. And I want the same distance that I used on the other one. And all of this can be sewn by hand if you do not have a sewing machine. All of this can be done by hand. And later on in the video, I'll show you a hand stitch so that you can do that if you want. And there's that. This is the perfect time, I just realized, to show you how to load a bobbin because I just ran out. I'm going to take my bobbin out. I'm going to take this out. I'm going to cut my thread a little shorter because it's way longer than I need. I'll load my bobbin real quick. Mary, why don't you go ahead and pause it on that and rewind it?